1 second.
Recording in progress. Very good. All right. Good evening, everyone. Attention. This will be a virtual meeting of the Marinwood CSD Board of Directors. There will not be a public location for participating in this meeting. Any interested member of the public can participate telephonically or via internet by utilizing the web link or dial-in information printed on the agenda. Instructions on how to make a public comment during the meeting. At points in the meeting, when the meeting chair requests public comment, members of the public participating in the live meeting, either via internet or telephone, shall indicate their desire to speak. If participating via internet, please click the raise hand feature located within the Zoom application screen. If connected via telephone, please dial *9. All public comments shall be addressed to the Board of Directors and limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The Board of Directors may choose to respond to comments or request staff to respond at the conclusion of the public comment period. So just to ad-lib this a little bit, during public comment, we're going to hear all public comment from any public commenter in any section before responding to any of the public comments, just to clarify that a little bit. So starting with item A, call to order and roll call of directors. Tiffany, will you do us the honors, please?
My pleasure. Board President Ruggieri.
Here.
Director Case.
Here.
Director Kilkenny.
Here.
Director Oiserman.
Here.
And Director Shea.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to item B, agenda. Looking to adopt the agenda. Any comments from the board?
Lisa, I have a small request. Luke and the rec staff are actually away at a conference this meeting. Luke's taking this call from his hotel room. If I could move Luke's recreation and park maintenance activity report or request to move it to just ahead of the fire department matters, then he can cut off as soon as that part is concluded.
Okay. So it sounds good to me. Is that okay with you, Chief?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, then we will flip-flop items G and F. Thank you. Any others? All right, any public comment on adoption of the agenda?
Sure, 1 second.
Yeah, hello, can you hear?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this is Steve Nessel. And so the agenda is very light tonight, and I'm kind of wondering why, because we have a lot of issues going on, and I'm wondering, I don't know why it's so light. Maybe not a whole lot was done, but we have the trail to talk about. We have the playgrounds to talk about. We have the maintenance of the trails to talk about, the access for seniors and handicapped people. And, you know, all these issues keep coming up, and yet there's really not a discussion of it. I think, you know, it looks like the main topic tonight is increase in pay, and well, I'll address that later, but certainly I think there could be a much more rigorous coverage of the business of Marinwood. I certainly hope it's not being done on an informal basis, i.e. not in a public forum. So anyhow, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Okay, so we will then be adopting the agenda, as is with the exception of the items swapped F and G. And then moving on to the consent calendar. I need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I motion to approve the consent calendar. Yeah.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments from the board or questions? None. Okay. Anything from the
Sorry,
public?
sorry, it took me a second to find my unmute there. Just looking at that, are we, obviously, we're conducting this one on Zoom. Are we at some point going to discuss meeting in person? I'm like, don't we have to discuss that?
You're certainly welcome to discuss it. I don't know that you have to. None of the circumstances that are outlined in the resolution have changed.
Okay,
That said, if you wanted to pull this item as a separate item and just vote on the other two and have a more robust discussion about that amongst the board, that's certainly an option you could make as well. Or we can add it as a standalone item for next month to be discussed.
I was going to say, yeah, I would propose that we make that a separate item, just because we're moving from, I think, the heart of a pandemic to the end of one to, I think, what we're calling an endemic now. And I'm not saying one way or the other if I want to meet in person or Zoom, but I think we should have a discussion.
I think that makes sense, Chris. Thanks for bringing that up.
I have made a note.
Anything else? All right. Any comment from the public?
Yeah, 1 second, please. Stephen.
So we're clear, we're on the consent C, right? The
Mhm.
consent calendar and everything in that section. Okay. First of all, as far as remote meetings, I kind of like them, and just because it's a lot easier than going out to the community center. And I'm just wondering if when we normalize that we could do some kind of hybrid type of meeting where some people might be online, or just make it a public spot available for people who wish to, who don't have online access. Maybe they could come in and sit in on one of the conference rooms or something like that. I did have a question on the consent calendar. I noticed there's looks like $700 for some summer entertainment or camp entertainment. I'm not sure if that's for the summer or some other period of time, but I'm just wondering if we can have a little bit of information on it. It seems to be a lot of money for entertainment, and maybe it's all worth it, but just curious what that expense is. That's all I had. It's a question, and hopefully I'll get a response.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other public comments?
Nope, that is it.
All right, so then there was the line item. I'm looking for it here around summer entertainment. Can anybody?
I think it's 6169. It just says community event expenses for 750. 228. I assumed it had to do with the various events that we are putting on, the Raise the Glass and everything.
Yeah, I don't, I was looking for one specific to summer, but I don't see
Oh,
one.
I see, yeah, 61, 69, I don't, 750.
Yeah, that was specific towards expenses for the Raise the Glass,
Okay.
I believe. Community event expense. Yeah, that number sounds right.
Is there one, I'm looking for one that said summer.
I didn't see anything that said summer.
Hold on. Street lights. Okay, well, I hope. Camp advertising camp. Oh, wait, spring summer review from Wesco Graphics.
No, that is the printing of the program catalog that goes out every year.
Okay,
That's more than 700.
Yeah, that's about, I
Yeah.
don't, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a large one. So,
I'm
no,
just-
the other one was,
I'm looking for summer on here.
yeah, it was expenses involved, with purchases that need to be made for the wine event.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
You are welcome.
All right. With that, can we call to vote for the consent calendar?
Sure. Board President Ruggieri,
Aye.
Director Case,
Aye.
Director Kilkenny,
Aye.
Director Oyserman,
Aye.
Director Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now moving on to public comment, open time for items not on the agenda. Do you have any public comment for open items?
Yeah, 1 second, please. Stephen.
So Lisa, you can, if you're having trouble understanding what I mean, you can call back on me. I had my hand raised. It's 61-1-2 and 61-1-3. Schultz Entertainment, it says Camp Entertainment at $337.50 each. I don't know, it says summer. I don't know if it's for next summer or the summer coming or last summer. So that's what I was asking about. But certainly, you know, we can have a dialogue here. I realize that some people may not like having a dialogue, but it's really kind of helpful with communication if we do. So let's just set that aside, and hopefully you will revisit my last question. So as far as the opening comments are concerned, you know, when they were digging around for the Indian mounds in this area, and all through all along Miller Creek and all on Miller Creek School, there was actually a village here, and they found a lot of bones, a lot of pottery and arrowheads and all kinds of stuff. But one thing that they didn't find is what these people were thinking, what their motivations were. The only thing that really survived them was their physical culture, the work that they put forth in their community. And other than that, we're just lost to piece it together. And I bring this up because your work tonight doesn't, you know, the thoughts running through your head, the conversations we're having, this is all going to be forgotten. The only thing that makes a difference is what we do to improve our parks, improve our communities. And I urge you again tonight to do big things and think big thoughts and think how we can grow our community better. And also to, once you've kind of established that vision, hold our staff accountable to achieving that vision. That's basically, you know, the role of local government, and you as elected or appointed people. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Stephen.
Lisa, if you don't mind, if I could just circle back really quickly, I will say now that I see what he's looking at, I was just looking for the wrong number. This is certainly the time of year where we do book in advance a lot of the, you know, I would just call them special guests or enrichment people that come out. We have people that come out that do, you know, bring petting farms, or they're setting up and paying in advance for field trips, or they're setting up, paying in advance for other presenters that come into the camp programs. So you're going to see more of those appearing as we get closer to summer, just so that way we can solidify and book them in advance and know that we have them for the dates we want them.
Sounds great. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Sorry.
that. Yep. For clearing up that mystery for us. Appreciate it. Any other public comment?
No.
Okay, so then that moves us on to district matters. Item 1, first draft district operating budget for FY 2022 to 2023.
Yeah, so I kind of tried to put it right in the very first couple lines, and I just want to make very clear that this is just really the very early stages of putting the budget together. It always is this time of year, but we practice, and I think it's a good practice and a transparent practice that once we start putting it together, it's presented to the board at each meeting leading up until final adoption. This particular budget where it stands now, it is certainly in line with where we are typically at this point in time in the process. But it is going to change dramatically. The other thing that I want to, or not dramatically, but significantly, the other thing I want to point out is I do include, just kind of more for a reference point, the actual numbers for this fiscal year through February 28th. They haven't been fully vetted and journaled. Some of those numbers may change, just be reappointed to different accounts, things along those lines. They won't necessarily go up or down, but they will. Some of them aren't necessarily, might need to go into a different budget line or other things like that. So that's just part of the regular journaling and review process, auditing process for each quarter. You can see I kind of gave you, some of the things that are still outstanding. The ad valorem property taxes obviously is a big one, needs to be projected and updated. The bulk of all recreation camps, programs, classes, special events, facility rentals, all we actually have a meeting scheduled for next week with myself and the rec department staff. So that'll be updated at that time as they're finalizing what that looks like. And then our service contracts on the fire side with both CSA 13 and County Farm. I do have a note in there later, but those are kind of placeholders that don't get finalized until actually after the end of the fiscal year, because there's a reconciliation process involved that carries over year with how those contracts are formed. On the expenditure side, obviously, especially on the rec, part-time and seasonal staff wages will be updated. The rec program contractors, I'm still waiting for final information from insurances. I'll need to go through and kind of analyze all of the utilities, where we're at on that, our various countywide fees, things like our LAFCO dues, various dues associated with the fire department, so on and so forth. So a lot of that'll be coming, a majority of that mostly by next month, but we still got a while to go. And then the other thing I wanted to explain is, even though we're starting to come back to what is, kind of quote unquote, more normal operations, it still makes it very tough from a budgeting perspective when you're trying to look at things from a year-to-year perspective, especially on the recreation department side, not as much on the fire side. But when you're looking at, well, how come these numbers are so different than the prior year? It's because, we served a fraction of the kids and had a fraction of the staff. So you just see much wider variations than you would typically see from year to year. Again, this will be on every single board report or board packet and board agenda with a planned adoption date for May 10th, which is the typical May thing. So it'll be another draft next month that I think will be much closer to final, and then a final draft on May 10th that I don't anticipate will have huge fluctuations between those two drafts as it will from this draft. Things that have been that you can see, all of the full-time staffing wages and the staff related costs, from a wage perspective, have been updated to the current census models. This includes pensions, medical benefits, things along those lines. It also includes the most recent wages for the fire department personnel that were agreed upon when the board adopted the MOU. I did want to point out that it makes it seem that happened after the adoption of the last budget. So when you look at like what it looks like in the increase just in the fire salaries, you're actually looking at 2 years worth of wage increases that are in there, because the numbers for 21-22, this current budget were approved before the MOU, but we never went through a formal budget amendment process to change that, which is fine. It's not something that's required or even needed to do. Other things of note, district-wide, our workers' comp is going to get a little bit more expensive, mostly because our experience modification factor is going up from 140 to 165%. However, this budget does continue the work that the board has committed to, in that addressing our OPEB liabilities by continuing to contribute to our OPEB trust fund, as well as our capital reserves and board designated reserves remain each at 100,000 for the year anticipated. So hopefully that'll be able to continue going. I don't see why it wouldn't. Otherwise, the other, kind of big piece in this on the park department is I did incorporate the fees, the payment schedule, the amortization schedule for the financing that was taken out for the maintenance facility. So that is shown within the park department under long-term debt and long-term interest. That number, when you combine them, will stay consistent for the next 10 years unless the district pays off early after year 5. The only fluctuations you will see is with each year, the principal amount stated will go up a little bit, while the interest amount stated will go down a little bit, which is very typical in how long-term debt works. Otherwise, you can kind of see the rest of the notes. I'm happy to field any questions. Just realizing this is nothing more than the very first, very preliminary draft. It's going to have a lot of changes between now and the April meeting. The April meeting is going to give us a much better picture at the overall. But this is where we typically are, and I do think that it is certainly helpful to view and ask any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Any questions or comment from the board? Go ahead, Siobhan.
I just had a kind of a quick question. In looking at the various numbers that we have budgeted, there's that word. I know that we're going to have an increase in rentals for the outdoor picnic areas and the pool. And there had been a discussion actually right before COVID about how we were renting out the actual facility and for what events. And I'm wondering if that discussion is starting up again now that people are starting to possibly want to do indoor rentals.
This isn't something that we've discussed in great detail yet. We haven't opened up indoor rentals yet. That said, it'll be something that, Luke and I will certainly discuss when we get together and look at kind of the rest of the park and the rec offerings and the budgeted expenditure. So we'll have a better update for you for that, I would say, at the next meeting. And just kind of, it just gets tricky on that because people book out very far in advance on those things. Public health situations can change, and it's very hard to go back to somebody who's planning an event at our place to now say, you can't do that anymore. It involves refunds. It's a hardship on them. So, there's a lot of consideration factors that do go into it, not just where are we currently, but we got to think of where could we be down the line, and it doesn't represent a huge amount of revenue on that.
I was just looking at the various numbers and trying to wrap my head around that and the discussions that we were going to be having about wage increases. So I just kind of wanted to know if that was going to be money that we were going to start having coming in again or not. Okay.
Sure. Understood.
I have one question. I believe that at a previous meeting, it was discussed that we would have pool memberships again this year. And I noticed that there's no line item for that.
Yeah, we just haven't, again, that all kind of falls under all of the rec program, pool operations. We haven't sat down and had that meeting yet, so none of that has been updated yet. But yes, we are selling pool memberships, and yes, we will estimate out, kind of based on historicals and where we are and what we anticipate a number there, most likely a conservative number.
I expect it to be conservative. It's your, but I just wanted to make sure. I was kind of questioning my memory too.
No. We are pool memberships are currently for sale, and they will certainly be reflected in the budget.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
And then we're going to be starting camp. So that will like super increase the number of pool memberships. Are we doing the thing where if you buy your pool membership, you can register for camp early again?
No, but you do get a discount.
Okay. I just was wondering if like for people who were not in Marinwood, if we were doing that for them again.
No.
Any other questions from the board, comments? How about from the public?
Yep, 1 second, please. Stephen.
So I would like to make some comments about the budget, but I want to make sure I understand it first. The actuals column as of 2/28, is that from July 1st through February 28th or what?
Correct.
Okay. So one observation that I made, I'm making is, you know, the budgets and the actuals, there's a huge gap. And, you know, I'm not quite sure why there's such a gap of expenditure of actuals from the budget. But that's a little concerning because, you know, the budget is where we establish our priorities. And so if we're not spending like we had anticipated, then we need to adjust the budget appropriately. And it doesn't look like you're doing that. I understand it's been a weird year as far as revenue goes due to COVID, but maybe you can discuss that a little bit more. Okay, so yeah, the only thing I would say is the budget should reflect the priorities of the board. And if you haven't thought what those priorities are, it's not to, you know, put a gold star on our staff's forehead each month, but actually measure them against the goals that we've set out as a district. And I don't think we've really fully articulated that. So the discussion of the budget really needs to reflect that. And we need realistic budgeting numbers. So hopefully it'll get a little closer to reality the next time we look at it. As far as the rentals of the facility, I don't know. I see kind of underactivity in that area. Yeah, there's a lot of interest, but I think we could do a better job of marketing. I know there's concern about public safety, and I don't think we've figured that portion out. I'm really concerned with the amount of alcohol that we serve in the community, and both inside and outside. And I think that's part of the problem with you know, some of the public safety issues that we've had to deal with. But hopefully, you know, people are still getting married and girls are still having quinceañeras, and we really should make our facilities available to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other public comment?
No, that was all. Thank you.
Okay. And moving on to item 2, pay schedule wage adjustments for non-represented positions.
Sure, I can get this started. Obviously, you know, the packet here includes a very detailed staff report that was put together for this. I'm certainly not going to go through and read it word for word or line by line, but one of the things I do want to explain right off the top is at this point in time, this is not a formal action item. You're not looking for a motion and a second and a vote from the board. This is an informative item with some staff recommendations that will coincide with the budget approval process, and then ultimately with the approval that happens in June every year of the public pay schedules. So those are the 2 action parts that will occur in May and in June. And that would be the timing. However, this is a good time to talk about it, and it's certainly a good time to put it out there, and it's a transparent way to discuss what, in my opinion, is a bit of an imminent need. And there is 2 factors here at play. The first factor is looking at what are some recommended immediate adjustments that will be incorporated into the draft budget, and ultimately, if the budget supports it, incorporated into the final budget that gets approved. And then the second aspect of this is the need to look at and develop and a regular practice of reviewing these items. For context, I've only been here for a little over 7 years now. When I came in was kind of, towards the tail end of what was a more financially challenging time for the district. The district had just got done making some really tough decisions, some of which were explained in this packet, and, eliminating positions and outsourcing certain things. And for a year or two, my understanding was actually spending more than they were bringing in a given year. We are not necessarily in that position anymore. We've found ourselves in a much more financially stable and consistent position. Monies that we have in the bank, monies that we have set aside towards reserves, towards long-term liabilities is much stronger, especially considering that we had none prior to, kind of some of the actions that have been taken over the last few years. We've made significant gains on our cash holdings, so forth. Unfortunately, as we've done that, looking at what our pay schedules are for the positions that we do have, which, quite honestly are pretty limited considering the scope of output that comes out of this agency, has been neglected. So, those are the two conversations that are somewhat different. One is looking at what we have presented here, and then the other is how is this going to be addressed in a more regular manner year over year or even every other year. But I think is equally as important as what we're looking to do right now. And I think that would help me to know that what I can put together and information for the board. I think it'll help staff to know that, okay, there is, some level of a wage process. It doesn't mean that every year wages are going to get increased. It means we're going to look at the district's ability to afford, other economic factors that are at play, and come up with the process by which to measure against as this gets reviewed on a regular basis, whatever that may be, either annually or biannually is what I would recommend. As far as the task at hand here, looking at what is immediately put in front of you, I've tried to give you a lot of information and data. One being, just a history of kind of the recent increases for the positions that are listed. Also, kind of some broad strokes on what those position responsibilities are, and then looking at current pay schedules for those and recommended pay schedules for those. It should be pointed out that especially on our rec side, as staff, and I certainly want to thank Luke because he put a lot of time, and him and his staff did, in kind of looking at some comparables based on my request and asking him to do that. Park side and on the maintenance side is a little bit more cut and dried. On the recreation side, one of the big findings is it's really a lot more, I don't want to say convoluted, but it's not as easy. It's not an apples to apples comparison, as I wrote in there. Staff do different things. Titles mean different things at different places. What we call a rec supervisor might be a rec coordinator in a different position, or vice versa. Especially looking at Luke's position, I don't know of many other agencies that have somebody who's serving as the, at a director level for two entirely different departments, being both, our recreation department and our parks maintenance department. So for that reason, we chose to omit the comparables because it just seemed to lead to more confusion than it did any levels of clarification. What I can say is, as we were looking at things and trying to dig into them, it was consistent with all of the positions that we have at this agency, all of which, fall at or near the bottom of all other respective agencies that are locally found that serve the same types of functions. Hence the need to review and potentially go up with that. So right now, what I'm hoping for the board is, some level of discussion on what was presented here, some level of discussion on what would seem to make sense for a regular practice of reviewing these moving forward, and then ultimately some level of consensus amongst that discussion that will allow me to take some of these numbers and put them into future budget drafts, so you can start to see how exactly that's going to play out within this budget in particular. It's hard to play it out year over year because there are variable factors that come into play, certain things that change that are directly tied to wages, such like pension contribution rates, workers' comp rates, and taxes, things along those lines. So that's where we're at. Again, it's a lengthy report. I appreciate everybody's time in reading it thoroughly, I hope, and I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify or and primarily listen as well to the board's thoughts and discussion on this.
Thanks, Eric. So opening it up to the board. Any,
It's about.
so I mean,
time.
there's two different components that we're looking at here. I guess first what I'm going to suggest we do is, look specifically at the recommendations that have been made as far as the adjustments for this next year. And then, of course, looking at kind of a go forward basis, how it would make sense to review compensation for these groups to make sure that we're doing it regularly.
I'll start. Thank you immensely for putting this together with all the details, not, of what they do and what they handle. And I just want to let you and your staff know that we appreciate every little big task that you guys do. You guys are small and mighty, so it is definitely noticed. I like the 10%. I'm just gonna jump in. I like the 10%. I will agree with Bill that it is due and past due. I also think the consideration is if we lost any one of them or that position, what would it cost us to hire somebody, and not only just hire, but train and try to get them up to speed and try to, and then not lose them from them being overwhelmed with the small but mighty task that they will have to endure. So I want to make sure that we are also competitive within this market to retain who we have. So that's kind of where I'm also looking at this as my position of moving forward. And then do you want to discuss this and then discuss annually versus or timing afterwards? Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll do it separate.
Yeah. So thank you,
Mhm.
Director Kilkenny, for the recommendation.
Go
ahead.
I don't really have much more to say because I just second that. I think we all know that we have an amazing group of people working for us and that they do above and beyond what could be expected out of people, especially with some of the facilities that we've been expecting them to work out of. Having come on the board earlier than some of the other people, I knew that it wasn't in our budget previously. And now that we're more financially stable and have some wiggle room, I really think that the 10% seems totally reasonable to adjust for this year. And I'm happy to discuss how we can make this moving forward. Just as Kathleen said, we can't afford to lose anybody, and not just financially, but the years of experience and knowledge that everybody has about the district and the inner workings would be a great loss and felt across the board. So
I agree. I would jump right on board with the staff recommendations. I look at those wages and I always compare it to kind of, like the whole teacher process that we go through. These probably are barely living wages in Marin, and it's not getting any cheaper, that's for sure. So I would totally promote the staff recommendations.
Director Shea.
What can I possibly add to that other than I've been on trying to get this going for the last few months. So yeah, we started talking about this last year, going forward. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with the staff recommendations.
Thank you. And I agree with that as well for so many different reasons. And again, Eric, thank you so much for laying all of this out just so clearly so that we could see not only, what the bottom line number would be for these increases, and then just looking at what they are. I think about just attrition and just how tight the labor market is. I mean, right now it's tighter than it was before the pandemic. I'll just tell you that much. And turnover is very costly, and recruiting is very costly, and we don't want to see anybody go. So and these people do a lot for us, and their roles have certainly they've gone in a number of different directions and taken on a lot more than what they originally signed up for. So I am in full support of staff recommendations. And then sort of moving on to what, kind of a go forward, for lack of a better way of putting it, review process of just looking at review of compensations and where we can make adjustments. I'd be interested in knowing, and I'm going to open this up, but from my perspective, I think it would be helpful to know what other districts are doing, and how often they're conducting these types of reviews. And that can maybe give us some more guidance as to whether it's annually, every other year, how, and as well as who sort of does them. Is it something that there's a subcommittee for, or outsourced? A lot of other details. So I'd be interested to know, and I think we have some time, kind of some comparables. That's my piece on that part. If anyone else would like to share their thoughts.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure whether looking at it annually would do a whole lot of good because of the way things move. They can move slowly. So biannually seemed to be, to me, a more logical way of doing it. But never having done this before, and I'm not in the job market, or we haven't hired somebody in God knows how long. I think biannually. I just think annually is just too often to go through a process like that when there's other things.
Well, if you had something in place where if you got a certain review, you would get X bump, then it wouldn't have to be an annual thing that's so complicated, but like a larger raise.
Well,
Right.
can I
wait,
interject
wait.
for a second, please? I just want to play a couple of thoughts that have been coming is in looking at this and what these kind of pay schedule wages are. And, my mindset going into this, and believe me, I respect and appreciate the people who are currently working for us as much, if not more than anybody, is this is about the positions. And the positions that we need, not necessarily about the people that are in them. And there's a vast difference between how, salaries and increases are looked at in a private sector versus a public sector. And in a private sector, a lot of times they are tied to reviews, which is a very objective measure. And I would strongly recommend staying far away from objective measures and looking at these positions and the tasks that are needed from these positions in comparison to market rates of what the positions have. That's just my 2 cents. And I reiterate that is in no way, shape, or form my reflection of how much I value the people that are currently in the roles. But in a public agency, and any public agency attorney will tell you this, if you start tying things together with, performance reviews or anything like that, you're really getting into a tricky area. It closes off transparency to large degrees. It makes this very transparent when it is, these are what, and that's a lot of the reason why they have the step systems in place that kind of guide you through those first several years as well. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think in a public sector, that is not a standard way of doing business, and it's actually kind of recommended against, unfortunately.
So are you?
Can I
Okay,
ask my question really quick?
yeah.
I haven't taken my HR module yet. But can you confirm that we wouldn't even see the review? We don't manage our staff.
These aren't merit-based increases. These are not
Correct.
merit-based.
That's the right term, Lisa. This
And
isn't a merit,
so
right.
we would be, when I say review, we would be reviewing what the numbers look like and if we can increase them, and if so, by how much.
No-
And that would be the review part.
Correct.
Correct.
So-
I got that from your comment. Savon's, I felt like it was more on a personal,
Yeah, I didn't realize.
And Eric clarified that that's not how we're
Yeah.
going to do it.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I've always worked for private companies.
Right.
Or universities that did not have this step system in place. So,
Right. Mhm.
okay, so quick question. So we've all agreed definitely with the park maintenance that we're agreeing with the 10%, and now we're discussing how to move forward yearly, or did we agree for both the recreation and the maintenance that we will go with the recommended increase of 10% for park and rec? And I believe it was 5.
It varies on some of them. One of the ones that is actually a little bit trickier, and I kind of meant to touch on this, and I unfortunately forgot about it, is in looking at the assistant recreation director position as well
Okay.
as the recreation supervisor position. What I'm suggesting here is slightly different, so I'm going to just go ahead and start with the recreation supervisor position. And Lisa, I know this
Okay.
is getting us a little off topic in terms of looking at what's the process going forward, and I do have thoughts on that as well. But in terms of the recreation supervisor, this position has actually gone up recently. However, as recently as last year, and again, that was done wholly in part because it was no longer in compliance with the exempt salary thresholds as set forth by the Department of Labor. So that's in regards to FLSA. The Fair Labor Standards Act says that for people to be considered exempt, they have to meet not only specific work duties, but also a very specific salary threshold. The recreation supervisor position, as we have it, absolutely needs to be an exempt position, and that's why that was moved up. When we did that, however, steps D through EE, or 4, 5, and 6 did not follow the traditional 5% step model. Those were reduced at the time because it was a larger increase. If you look at, say, from step 2 to step 3, that's actually more than a 5%. So step 4, 5, and 6 were brought down. What I would, at some point, we're still going to need to re-review where we're at on step 1 and step 2, because you couldn't bring in somebody at that wage and have them be FLSA exempt. But that's not what I'm proposing at this moment in time. But what I am proposing is for step 4, 5, and 6, we actually fall back in line with the 5% increase for that. The reason there's not a cost impact associated with that is because the current person in that position would be essentially is at step 3 for the vast majority of the next fiscal year. So that keeps them at that exempt level, and that's just the way that the timing is working out. If for some reason that position became vacant and we had to refill it, that would be a conversation Luke and I would have based on who we were able to recruit and find, that they might have to come in at step 2 depending on experience levels, and they would be strictly a 40-hour employee, paid hourly, looking at a non-exempt or at a non-exempt status, or ideally somebody with enough experience that we can bring them in at step 3 to immediately put them into exempt status. The bottom line is during the pool season, there are days and weeks where a 40-hour work week is far exceeded, and we just if you do that with somebody who doesn't qualify for exemption, then you're paying them overtime for every hour over 8 in a day or 40 in a work week. So that gets a little tricky. The assistant recreation director, that position was created in 2018, and it was formerly a recreation supervisor. However, in recognition that of the way that the tasks were divvied up, we certainly recognize that one of them seemed to, have a much larger workload, much larger responsibilities, tasked with all of the camps, the year-round youth programs, so on and so forth. We actually added a little bit more responsibility to that position. When that was originally done, that was set at a mark that was 15% higher than the recreation supervisor position. I'm not suggesting that at this stage. The recreation supervisor position also went up quite a bit with the exemption threshold set by the through FLSA. That said, I am, looking at, okay, how do we get back? Because when we moved those, they became very close to even if you actually look at where they fell. So I'm placing that at, with one level being a 5% above recreation supervisor and another level being at about 10%, at 10% above the recreation supervisor. One would have a burden impact of just under 5,000 for this fiscal year. The other would have a burden impact of around 9,000. But if you also see my recommendation, it still is moving it to that 10%. It's just, do you do that over the course of 2 fiscal years, or you do that all within this upcoming fiscal year?
And would that, the person who's in the assistant recreation director, that would impact us directly because they're in, okay, never mind. Sorry.
Because their current step would go up.
Yeah.
There's no change to the current step of the recreation supervisor position that they are currently in. So that's why
Okay.
that's a nominal impact.
Okay.
I know it's a lot of info, so I apologize
Well,
for that.
the reason I had asked what I asked was basically saying, okay, we're all basically agreeing that everybody needs the raises, and we're agreeing with the recommendations that you're giving us for what they need to be made whole. But then with what we're saying, that what we're currently starting off as with all of our positions as our step ones, we couldn't hire anybody. So I'm putting this out there. It may be completely wrong. Shoot me down. But what if we just kind of moved everything over? And so that,
Well, I think essentially
this-
that's what we've done. Like, so if we raise the entire pay schedule by 5%, what you're actually doing is taking everything and moving it
Right.
backwards a
The
step and
numbers
then
come out.
adding another step
So-
that's 5% at the end.
so
this-
I just want to make
this-
sure that then our step one, when we're hiring people in, that would be, we would be able to hire people at each of these positions with that amount of money.
But that's what, I gotta catch up here for a minute.
Okay.
We are approving all the, like the increase for all the steps, correct?
I
You're not
believe so. We're not
not
approving anything. We're
technically a-
discussing it. We've all agreed. We're not,
Correct, but hold on, let me
voting.
ask
Yeah.
wait, I gotta catch up. Let me ask my questions. When we discuss this, we are discussing increasing all the steps. And then what you just said, Eric, is that based on someone's skill, they can come in step number 2 or step number 3 if you choose to have them come in at that level, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I wanted to make sure that I'm just following what,
Right.
a lot of information here.
Yeah, all of the steps would be increased by what would the numbers that we're discussing, by the percentages we're discussing. And then in the future, people can be hired into any of those steps at that new amount.
and I'm
Correct,
just,
so, yeah.
I just want to confirm that we could actually get people if we needed to, because we do have open positions right now that we haven't been able to fill.
We have one open position, and that's one that is being addressed actually with the largest increase. That's only on the park side. We don't have any open positions that are listed here on the recreation side.
Okay. But I just want to make sure that with all of the positions, by doing these increases, we will be able to hire people in. It's not that we're going to also need to then address that again when
Well,
we try to hire.
Is it enough? Is that the question? Is
Yes.
it enough?
Yes.
I
Um,
mean,
To be bluntly honest with you, I mean, we're amongst the lower of the pay schedules for comparable positions. That said, not everything is always about pay. And is it enough is, a bit of a rhetorical question that is tough for us to be able to answer until we actually would have to go through that process.
And then this is also a piece that supports us then going back and looking at these numbers every so often to see if they're in line with what the market is telling us they need to be.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. That's a good way to put it.
So I guess then kind of, moving on to, back to where we were as far as, I mean, do we want to go into the numbers anymore, or can we move on to kind of the go forward on review?
I think the only thing for me that I would be looking for, kind of that further direction in terms of the actual numbers is, like I said, I've given you kind of two different options for one of the positions. In terms of how to get it up to where staff recommends it should be, and whether that's happens within 1 year or 2 years. I would personally recommend, and looking at what the final numbers came out to be, it's only a difference of about $4,000. I would incorporate that into next year's budget, all of it, rather than looking at this from a two-step process. And that's just simply for the assistant recreation director position, which certainly is a heightened level position that it is being compared to for this purpose.
Yep.
I vote for 1 year,
Yeah,
but
too. I mean, we're not
Well,
voting, but
we're not voting, but like I say that we request that Eric build it into the 1 year budget, not 2 year budget for
Mhm.
this.
Good.
That
Okay,
one.
Thank you.
Correct. I liked Lisa's suggestion on seeing how other agencies review. But for these numbers for this budget, I would like, I would prefer and like to see the max increase that the recommendations are coming across for each position. And then in this year's budget, and just hit us hard, basically. And then I would also I do like your suggestion of what agencies are reviewing. But I kind of originally my thought was every 3 years, because I really don't revisit this every single year. But I like Bill's suggestion of biannually. I think it's nice to give the staffs the idea of, okay, for the next 2 years, this is my income. For the next, you have a little bit of a security. So that's just kind of where I'm coming from. So I like the biannual as well. So.
go ahead.
The one thing I would say, I mean, there are certainly other avenues besides just our local folks. I mean, through CSDA, there's what's known as a listserv board that I can certainly pose the question out to, ultimately what's a couple hundred different agencies across the state in terms of how do you, what is the process, procedures, and timings in regards to reviewing pay schedule adjustments. And then, as it was mentioned earlier, we actually do have 2 board members that are participating in the Special District Leadership Academy with several other districts and representatives right now. And there will be an HR and a finance component that is coming up in those. And I think it would be a good question to pose to those groups that they are interacting with and get some other ideas from that perspective on, hey, is this something, does your agency have a regular timing by which these are reviewed, and what are the factors that they are reviewed against?
There we go. This is great timing.
Yeah, definitely we'll be asking questions, though we're waiting till we have more than one module before we bring you the
Right.
list of things that
No,
we want
but I
to
don't mean
do.
a question of me. I mean, ask that amongst the other participants that you are doing this program with.
Oh yeah. We've
Yeah.
been discussing things as a group. It's been a really good.
Yeah.
I
and,
suggest
right.
that others
and
do it.
on something like that, I think it's good to get, for timing on that, I would say this is something to bring back, at the beginning of the next fiscal year, once we kind of get through budget, get through the end of this fiscal year. It gives us something that could be discussed, August, September timeframe, which gives us more than enough time, just the process itself, and then we can apply that process and refine that process as we move forward and actually review this in a couple of years. So it gives us plenty of time to pull this info, query, well beyond just our usual kind of local partners, and other agencies do this. There's not a reason to reinvent the wheel. It's to, kind of take the best practices from other agencies and modify it to fit the needs of this district. So.
Like that. And I appreciate kind of the perspective on timing to do this. And I mean, that gives us ample, I think, time to do some diligence around it and come to the table with recommendations for go forward. All right, well, anything else from the board on pay schedule wage adjustments?
I just think it seems like we have our consensus on the actual adjustments. I mean, I know we have to finalize it formally, but I really think it's smart for us to go out and get as much information as possible. I like the direction we're headed here. It's great. Thank you.
So that I am clear, and obviously still need to go to public comment, but right now it seems like it's a consensus amongst the board to incorporate the models that equal the $39,740 impact to this budget as laid out in the conclusion paragraph at the end. And then we're going to research and bring back sometime shortly into the beginning of the new fiscal year potential processes by which a more formal review can take place on a regular basis.
Correct.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Any public comment?
Yes, 1 second. Stephen.
Thanks for this great report, Eric. And I agree with you that one of the things you need to be careful with making these comparisons with all these other agencies is it's really not an apples to apples comparison. Marinwood is a small agency, limited in scope and responsibility. And our staff wear more hats, I think, than all of these other municipalities. Having said that, I do agree that we need to pay our staff competitive wages always. And I am a little bit troubled by the notion that we can't have merit reviews. I have always been in the private sector. That's the only way I've been judged is by what I do for my employer. And so this idea that you would simply move people along by virtue of just, having the job for a long time just seems like a demotivation for the employees. I do believe that good employees save money, can make you money. I really do believe in excellence, but I also believe in measuring that excellence against some kind of criteria. I don't know how from the staff standpoint, how do they evaluate themselves? How well are they doing? So I do have a couple questions. Are the staff earning any money from CSD activities, outside normal business? For example, the wine event we had. I do believe that we started doing these many years ago during the budget shortfalls as a way to give additional money to our staff. And is that money being accounted for in these pay schedules? So that I think is an important question, because I think we need to start looking at some of our revenue generating activities as businesses, as profit and loss events. And it doesn't mean we can't sustain a loss if we want to do something, but at least we have the ability to understand what we're investing in. I think we have expanded our staff quite a bit, and more people are in the office, and the same or maybe a little less work is being completed out in the field now because of COVID and other events. And so I would also like a review before agreeing to this, which I do think we need to do increases, especially in this inflationary environment. But before we do that, I think we need to ask ourselves, you know, are we properly structured, or is our staff doing stuff that needs to be done in-house? Can we outsource some of these things? One of the thoughts was, you know, we do the review all the time. That costs a lot of money. There's a staff member devoted to that. Maybe that should be outsourced. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but those are the kinds of things I would ask. And I think in general, I think you have to ask yourself, we've upped our staffing level. Do we really need the level of staffing on a year-time basis that we currently have? The reason I would like to do this is—
I'm sorry, it's been 3 minutes, and I believe that we gave you 3 minutes, Stephen.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I would like to continue. I'd like to finish up my thoughts if I could.
You've been speaking for 5 minutes, just so you know.
Okay. Thank you for your patience. I know it can be hard at times listening to people talk. I do think that if we are properly structured in our staffing,
We're
we can
gonna have to meet you.
pay more for the excellent people, the excellent staff that we do have.
Thank you, Stephen.
Is that enough? Are you sufficient? You guys treat me very rudely. I think you need to reboot the interaction here, because it's—
3 minutes is all you get.
Okay, shut up, Bill.
Okay, so a question that was there, I believe there was a question that about.
There's a couple things in there that I can certainly address if you would like me to.
Thank you,
Lisa.
please.
Yeah. There's comment regarding staff that are earning money outside of normal business as a result of our special events. I'm not, no, to answer that question. That doesn't happen. It certainly has never happened in my time, and I'm not aware of that ever happening. Staff does not earn side money from special events in any way, shape, or form. Then there was a comment about expanding our staff, and actually that is not an accurate comment either. We have not expanded our staff. The staffing has stayed the same for actually quite a while, and if anything, we've actually reduced staff by 40% on our park side, and within our office it's the same staffing model that it's always been, with the exception that the administrative assistant position, which at one time was an hourly position, was moved into a full-time role, keeping in mind that for a multifunction special district that has a little over a $6 million budget, there's all of 2 positions dedicated to the entire business administration of this district. So otherwise, staffing positions have not been expanded, and staffing has not been expanded. If I would recommend anything, it would be that it should be expanded, because we should certainly have the amount of stuff that we do with the limited number of staff that we have is fairly remarkable, and sometimes it concerns me to some degree on staff burnout. Of course, expanding staff means I need a place for them to go, and as all of you have walked through this office, I have no idea where I would put any of these extra staff, but they could certainly be well used. But I think right now with the model, and fortunately with the people that we have in place, we seem to continue to not only get it done, but find ways to improve and expand year after year.
Thanks, Eric.
Can I also add that as a board member, I trust our supervisors and our director to do the review. Again, we addressed that earlier, that is not the board's position to review and do reviews on merit. So I just want to throw that out there again.
Good.
Thank you,
Okay.
Director Kilkenny. All right, can we move on to the district manager report?
Sure. As you kind of look, one thing, I certainly want to highlight is on the play structure replacement project, normally known as the playground project, but it really is just focused on the play structures and replacing those. Chris Case, as a representative from Kelly's Wishes, contacted me a while back and informed me of one thing that was very exciting and one thing that was saddening but very well understood is that the Kelly's Wishes Foundation, which is a foundation that his family had established when his a family member, also Chris's sister, passed away, fairly tragically at much too young of an age, was going to be dissolving, and that they were looking and would like to make their final donation towards this play structure replacement project, which is incredibly humbling. This foundation has done a lot of amazing things, not only just for local charitable causes, but other causes that spread just, beyond the walls of Marinwood, I would say as well. In working with Chris and his family and talking to them, the time was right to make this known publicly, that this was happening and that they are going to looking to make a very generous final donation towards this project that we get to be the honored beneficiaries of. So just a large thank you to the foundation, everybody involved with the foundation, and the Case family. Obviously, I know that their decision to dissolve, I'm sure, was not an easy one, and the fact that they were thinking about us as this final great cause, and this project in particular, I thought was just great. So, Chris and I and any other representatives from his family or the foundation will certainly talk a little bit more about what this means. And I would like to at some point bring back to the board after I talk to Chris on ways that it can be, properly and permanently acknowledged.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask if we can do a plaque
well, let me,
or whatever it is.
I'll talk to them and see what they are most comfortable with, and we'll bring this back to the board at that point in time. The park maintenance facility, if you haven't been near there, it is, we are right there on the end. Some of the things that I listed out, I can tell you the final interior doors have arrived. They are actually sitting in there. And just need to be installed. There's some minor trim work, some minor paint touch-up work in terms of the building itself, and then the final installation of the fire alarm and monitoring system that then will need to be tested. And then this building will be good to go in terms of going for a certificate of occupancy. That does not close the permit out, but it does create a certificate of occupancy. With that said, it's not quite ready to be fully moved in and become a working functional building. Before the end of this month, we will absolutely, in talking with the architect, I think we're on schedule for this, get the bid package and proposal out for the courtyards and everything that we are looking to do there. But they can certainly start moving things in, at least to the conditioned, enclosed, and secured space once the rest of the work is there. So the building is really fantastic. The structural engineer was out today just to verify he has no structural concerns over it. And then we'll walk through and do the punch list once all of the final pieces are done. So that way we're noting any of the punch list is just little things that still need to be addressed. And then we will sign off on that. So building looks fantastic. It's going to function fantastically, I believe. And so we're all excited to finally be at that point in the game. Nobody more so than myself, to be honest with you, because this has been one long detail-oriented project, to say the least, that has stretched many years and efforts, and it was quickly realized why agencies either have public works professionals or hire professional consultants to guide this process. That said, it was an interesting learning opportunity, one that I would not recommend we take on in-house again in the future. In terms of
May I
just
ask
the
one-
process and approvals. Yes.
May I ask one question? When we put out to the bids for the courtyards,
Yep.
are we potentially doing it in one big bin, or are we gonna split it up like we did the facility and the courtyards, just in case we don't it comes back too big and we don't do the back one.
What
versus-
that's a good question, Kathleen, and I'm happy to tell you what our thinking is on this. So there's two courtyards that are built. One on the west side, which is the side closest to Miller Creek Road, and one on the east side that kind of extends down towards the Panhandle Path. We are looking at what you are talking about is looking at a base bid that
Okay.
will be the western courtyard. That provides the final layer of security, because the western end of the building where the rolling stock and other items will go is actually open-ended and not conditioned. So this will close that off with a locking, rolling gate on that end. An alt or an additional alternative will be the eastern courtyard. They will all be bidding on all of it, but the base bid, the bid that you'll have to either accept or reject all bids, would be for the western courtyard. So that way, again, we're looking at, what are the costs going to come in at this? And then we're also looking at some adults for various materials, qualities, and building styles, between, steel versus wood versus types of wood and things like that. So the base bid will be the lowest, and then some of these adults will work their way up. So the board will have some options, and hopefully the goal is it comes in with, ideally what we want is to put up both courtyards. But I do think that at a
Right.
minimum, the western courtyard we could make that work. We can't really make it work without it as it currently stands, unless we just kind of come in and, just put up some fencing. But there's grading that's needed, there's fill that's needed, there is other drainage thoughts that come in. These will be cement kind of retained because of the way the grading works. So it really is kind of a professional level job, but we're looking to break it down into as a kind of a fail-safe measure. Depending on what amount these bids come back at, we can always scale it back and say, let's just put in the base level at this point in time.
Okay, I think that's what I was looking for, because I don't want to get to the point where we have to start over if we change anything. that-
Nobody wants to
bids.
not get to that
Yeah.
point more than I do, Kathleen. So that's why we're putting a lot of thought into how that's going to go out and how that's going
Okay.
to be bid upon. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions on that, or I just kind of move on real
Nope.
quick here? Miller Creek Trail, certainly not due to a lack of effort. I haven't had the opportunity to really communicate with the developer. We did have a conversation actually very shortly after the last meeting, at which point it became apparent that he didn't actually receive the report that I had sent him, 2 or 3 weeks prior, 2 weeks prior. So we left it at, he did confirm receipt of getting that report. He's going to review that report. We're going to set a time to discuss, and hopefully by next month I have better updates for you on that. So that way he can thoroughly review. And then the other one is just kind of an ad note here. We're still, putting pressure is the wrong term, but trying to have what's, this kind of cell dead zone address. This, exists kind of more in the berries, immediately west of the community center, as well as within the community center, and then moving out towards Lucas Valley Estates. And again, I just really want to thank Mary Sackett, who serves as the aide to Supervisor Damon Connolly. She's definitely put a lot of work and made a lot of headway in identifying the proper people. There is one little side note in this, one of the things that AT&T expressed when we were also telling them that this was a concern for first responders during a recent incident was that they do have what's known as a public-private partnership with the federal government for something that's called FirstNet. And this is a dedicated network specifically for first responders, operates, kind of in its own, on its own frequencies, on its own waves. I don't know if it's dedicated hardware, but it's a dedicated line for first responders. Doesn't solve the overall picture, and I have certainly made them aware that, part of our larger concern is this larger dead zone, but it's something that Chief White and I have had a very, very brief opportunity to kind of communicate with back and forth, and we'll look a little bit more into that. I don't know how applicable that really is to our small agency, but we do know some other agencies are using it. So I think Chief White, who is going to try to get a little bit more info from some of those other agencies on that. If it's an option, we'll bring it to the table down the line, but that doesn't address the larger problem that we're trying to have addressed, of just this kind of larger dead zone that exists within here, and how we can make hopefully make a little headway on that as well. You know, not just for our first responders, but, you know, our park maintenance staff is out there, Luke's out there, I'm out there. We're in those areas and find ourselves with no ability to communicate via cell phone because there just literally is no signal in a lot of those areas. So if we can help with that, and again, large thanks to Mary Sackett. You know, we're dealing with behemoth agencies here, AT&T and Verizon. I don't expect immediate response from them, but they have been, you know, fairly responsive, and I do know that they have tasked their engineering teams to at least research this to some degree. So hopefully we get some more news as it comes down the line. That's it.
Thank you, Eric. Any comments or questions from the board? All right. It's a good report, Eric. No questions or comments from the board. How about from the public?
Yes, 1 second. Steven.
Thank you. And board members, all of you, you know, I do try very hard to treat each one of you with respect and to appeal to your best instincts as people serving our community. I am very disappointed with some of the interactions that appear all too often. I think, you know, I think it actually represents harassment and is potentially actionable. Now that would be only for a few outstanding interactions, but it does get to that level of rancor. And I want you to basically rethink things, and I will rethink things. You're always welcome to talk to me privately if you think I've acted out of line. But I am not going to put up with it. I put up with way too much abuse, and you know, you can do better. We're all adults. We're all parents, I think, and we really set a bad example for our children and the community. With regards to the district manager report, you know, I think it's, first of all, it's just awesome that the Case family is once again doing wonderful things for our community. I think it's great. I wish we had a little bit more detail on the park maintenance facility. I walk past it every day. It looks like there was some problems with those metal poles that Bill wanted in front of the structure. I don't know what that's about, but hopefully we'll get that one, get that behind us, and we can get this whole episode behind us and concentrate on greater things like building the Miller Creek Trail. I do appreciate that Eric has his attention on this project, but I would like to see a little bit more action and thinking about our last discussion on this. I realized that perhaps our CITs could be help building trails this summer. Anyhow, good report, Eric. Keep up the good work, and we'll, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other public comment?
No, but I could clarify if you would like really quickly. There's no issue with what Stephen's referring to are actually structural support beams that are built into the structural design that go on the front, and there is no problems with those whatsoever. They're all functioning as proper and signed off on by the structural engineer.
Great. Thank you for the clarification. All right, then we'll be moving on to park and recreation matters. Mr. Fretwell.
Thanks, Lisa. I will just touch on a few things in my report here. As Eric noted at the beginning of the meeting, the recreation staff is currently in Sacramento at the California Parks and Recreation Society annual conference. We arrived today and we'll be coming back in a couple of days, which is a really amazing opportunity for us to be able to come and take advantage of a bunch of educational sessions and trainings and symposiums on a whole wide variety of topics in the Parks and Rec industry, involving new programs and software, equipment, and techniques and things that we can hopefully learn from and adapt for our own programs when we come back. We'll be excited to update the board at the next meeting on just what we took away and some of the experiences we were able to have. But it's gonna be a long week of just lots of sessions and hands-on trainings and things, and we're really looking forward to it. So the training's off to a good start, and I'm speaking to you from a hotel room right now. So that's where I'm at. Just a few things. So our Marinwood review, our spring summer catalog, came out on Friday, February 18th. It was mailed to around 19,000 local homes and businesses. And our registrations and inquiries from about camp and the pool season immediately began flooding in. So we're really excited to have kicked off our big marketing campaign for our summer programs. There's a lot of anticipation for all of our summer programs. The emails and the phone calls and the walk-in questions have been steady, and we're really anticipating a return to a normal summer, normal numbers this summer. So that's been great. Staff's been working hard to finalize our staffing and all of the programs for summer. We talked a little bit about entertainment and things. Robin's got a lot of great entertainment and special events planned for the summer camps, and we'll have more information about some of that as we get closer to summer. Some other big news: the Water Devils swim team started their practice on February 28th, and it's been great to see the team back out there, to see the coaches and the parents, and the pool just seems completely back to normal, which has been a nice relief, and we're really excited to have everybody back. The pool season opens to the public on April 4th, and we're getting the last minute things ready for that, and we're really looking forward to all of that. We are seeing the return of the pool membership this year, and so we've seen a lot of our veteran lap swimmers coming in to get their membership and sign up, and it's been really nice to see a lot of our swimmers that have taken a break the last couple of years for obvious reasons. I'm feeling comfortable to come back and return to the pool this season, so that's going to be really exciting. And again, that opens up on April 4th. Our summer camp registration, I mentioned last time, but it's opening up on Monday, March 14th to Marinwood residents, and then on Thursday, March 17th to the general public. And so that's going to be a very busy time, and staff's getting everything prepared and ready for that. We are not, I think this was asked earlier, we are not opening up registration for non-residents early who have a pool membership this year. So all non-residents will have to wait until Thursday, March 17th to register for camp. Another big thing to report on: this last Saturday, March 5th, we had our 11th annual Raise a Glass wine tasting event from 2 to 5 at the community center. I saw a lot of you there. It's great to see everybody. It was a really good installment of this event. We had 12 wineries show up this year, which was wonderful. And I think one of our strongest turnouts we've had in the 11 years that we've done the event. Everyone had a wonderful time, and it went really well. And we're really excited to kind of have a normal event return to the community center. So that was a really nice time, and thank you to all the staff that put all the work in to put on a really lovely event. The weather cooperated, and it was just really nice to kind of get back to normal with that. Our next event will be our spring art show on Saturday, April 23rd, and I'll have more details about that at the next meeting. So moving on to the park maintenance side of things, some really exciting news from just I witnessed a couple days ago. Some of the planting, well, most of the plantings we did along the creek bank this last December to try to curb the erosion issues we've been seeing. Almost all of them have sprouted leaves and seem to be growing, and it's very encouraging. We were expecting, under the best circumstances, about 70% of these shoots to take and to start growing. And based on my count, it looks like we're closer to 80 to 90% of the shoots have started to grow sprout leaves. That doesn't mean they're all going to survive, but it is very encouraging to see so much leafing on these shoots at this point in the season. So I'll continue to monitor that. I'll try to include some pictures next time for all of you and just kind of show you what's going on with that. But we're very encouraged by the efforts we had in December, and we'll continue to watch that and hopefully be able to see the banks get fortified this next season. Staff have been hard at work getting the pool all prepped for the season. They painted the bathrooms, made some plumbing repairs, checked all the equipment in the pump room, and I've gotten everything ready to go. We'll still be getting a few repairs done to the pool deck this next month, but things are pretty much on track for our opening on April 4th, and I'm feeling good about that. Some unfortunate news, we did get a report on February 25th that some trees in our open space received some vandalism and graffiti, some spray paint. And after documenting that and filing a police report, staff were able to spend multiple hours working on removing that, and we're able to get the vast majority of the graffiti removed. And we'll probably go back out and do a few more efforts to try to get that cleaned up. But it's the first time we've seen something like that, and it was disheartening. But thankfully, it looks like it's not going to be lasting damage. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we're working with the sheriff's department to try to make sure we don't see this repeat, or if it does, to try to track down who's the culprit on that one. But other than that, staff have been really busy getting irrigation fixed in a couple areas in the park, so we can get the water back on for the spring before the grass starts to die, and that's been going really well. That's all I wanted to touch on this report, but please let me know if anyone has any questions.
Looks really good. Pool looks amazing. Everything seems to be smooth running towards the sprint for the last bit before summer.
Thanks.
And I'm super excited for the return of music in the park.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I want to thank you on behalf of all our water devils that you heated the pool before practice.
Yes, the pool's nice
thank
and warm. You're welcome.
I'm not getting in, but they appreciate it.
Well,
So.
based on the size of the bill, PG&E appreciated it as well.
Oh. Talk to Chris. Just kidding.
I just wanted to say thank you for Raise a Glass. Formally acknowledge what a great event that was.
Thanks, Bill.
Totally agree on that. And I just wanted to point out that the lights that you guys installed, I think
Oh,
last season, but the lighting in pool is amazing. It's a total game changer. Feels much more safe, and it's very appreciated by the coaches
Yes.
and the swimmers.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, that was a little bit overdue. I'm glad we got it up to speed.
Lots of oohs and ahs the first day. Yeah.
I bet.
I don't even think the kids remember what the pool looked like before the lights. So, and thank you for the new flags. Not the checkered ones that were there last week.
We're getting there slowly but surely. Kathy.
Yeah, the right ones are up this time. So thank you. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Anything from the public?
Yeah, 1 second, please. Stephen.
Yeah, great job, Luke. Just a few quick things. I did mention the catalog. Gosh, it seems like you're not getting much advertising in that catalog, and I do think at some point that that whole project needs to be reviewed. Maybe it'd be better off served with a more with on a better website or something else. It just seems like a waste of money to me in a ways, but it could, if we got enough advertising, of course, it could pay for itself. Now you're up at the expo in Sacramento, and I think that's great. I guess there's a trade show that goes along with that, and hopefully you can talk with some people that do play structures and get some maybe get some information on how we can make our park more beautiful. I'd love to learn about splash pads and whether that would be feasible in our facility. So you're at the spot where I guess a lot of people are looking for business. So I hope you make use of that, your time there to talk with the reps. Other than that, I don't have too much to say. As far as the graffiti, there was one other thing I did want to say. I did run into a woman that saw some kids doing graffiti on the bridge. I can't think of her name. Chris, you know her name. She lives right where the Miller Creek Trail will go in, right to the right, Cardoni or something like that. She did see the kids. So if you're trying to track down who this was, it looked like young kids. They also hit the red bridge going into Miller Creek. And I don't know what the arrangements are for maintenance on that bridge, but it does need maintenance. It needs painting. You've got rust there, you've got graffiti, and it looks like some boards need to be replaced. So that's a project that you need to look at and you need to take serious. We don't want people falling into the creek because a board's rotten or have to replace that bridge because we didn't get the rust off and paint it properly. So I do think that's a project that needs to go high on your schedule, maintenance schedule. Other than that, good work. We'll see you again.
Steven.
Thank you, Stephen.
Just to clarify, the Red Bridge is owned and maintained by the school district and not under the CSD's purview. Just for that, but thanks for the information about the possible graffiti.
Do we need to reach out to the district or? They probably already know.
I might know a teacher there who I could talk to offline.
I mean, I don't know, maybe somebody who's sitting here on the screen. Oh,
Yeah. No, we can help. I'm sure they're aware of it, and we've had conversations with them about that bridge. But that's actually goes more into facility maintenance for the school district as a whole. So I know that bridge is on their radar, and they keep an eye on it.
Great. Well, unless there's any other public comment, we can move on. Thank you, Luke, for the report, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank
Agreed.
you,
thank
everyone.
you, Luke.
Have a good night. I'm out.
Enjoy SAC.
All right, moving on. Chief White. Actually, wait. Fire department matters. We're going to start with, the fire commission meeting. So that would be Director Kilkenny.
Hello. I don't really have much to add because we had a very efficient short meeting, and I don't want to take Chief White's thunder away. But I want to just publicly thank our fire commission members for their time and effort and their great input. So take it away, Chief White. I'm out.
So we got to review anything from the board, questions around the draft minutes from the fire commission meeting. Anything from the public?
I believe so. 1 second. Stephen.
Actually, I didn't really have anything to say. So carry forth other than the fact that you can't tell what went on, and because we don't have a recording, it's anybody's guess. So I don't think that's honestly, I think you need to revisit your policy. Why these people refused to be recorded is kind of appalling in my view. I don't know the other agencies that keep public meetings private, but we have the ability, we have the technology. It's just a matter of saving and publishing it to YouTube, and there can be better outreach into our community. This is not a private club, guys. It's a public agency, and you all are public servants. And even though maybe not everybody is fascinated in local issues like me and some other people, it's still your responsibility to be public. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Chief White, floor is yours.
Good evening, District Manager Drykosen and Board of Directors. Thanks to Commissioner and Board of Director Kilkenny for the efficient remarks. So that being said, I'll try to be as efficient as I can with this report as well. I'll start with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, where there's work underway for this upcoming work plan. And so there's been an ad hoc committee established. We met just well over a week or so ago. And there'll be a report out on some of the meeting outcomes on the March 15th Ops Committee meeting upcoming. We had a vegetation management specialist ad hoc committee that was formed to determine what would make sense for the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority team and their efforts to provide for a lot of the work and lift for multiple agencies that a vegetation management specialist could perform. We have some in San Rafael. I believe there's some in Novato, and the county has some, but for some of the other agencies, there's still a heavier lift. And so that committee was formed with the intent of evaluating the value, the source of funding, and the importance of that role. And so we've landed on at least one individual initially, and that individual will serve initially to help with the chipper program and administer the chipper program throughout the county. That committee, though, is being disbanded and is morphed into the Finance and Budget ad hoc committee. And with that, they wanted to bring on a little more leadership in the way of either a city leader or other county or district leader. And so an individual named Dave Donnery was invited to join that Finance ad hoc committee. Some of the things the Ops Committee will be doing this year is getting a better sense of what larger scale projects can be funded this year and receive some attention and needed resources. Additionally, there'll be some messaging that I think they really want to influence the community outlook and perspective on becoming a wildfire adaptive community, and kind of refrain from using terms such as fire season, starting to become an antiquated term as we look at what's happened, given climate conditions, given the drought we've been facing, given the fact that there's been incidents pretty much year round now. Some are still happening more in the fall and late summer months. But that being said, we saw recently fires erupting in other areas of the state and not far from us in some instances here in February and March. And so we're moving to a term of looking at ourselves as being the annual is the season, and becoming a wildfire adaptive community is the new approach to helping people understand how to live and or adjust to this new reality. Roadside work continues. And while we're also looking at Zone Haven and some of the evacuation related activities, everyone really truly understands why it's important to continue to create emergency ingress and or egress pathways through responsible vegetation removal and ensuring that there's a countywide approach to trying to ensure that pathways exist in some of the critical areas. And so that effort will continue. The advisory technical committee is actually looking at projects and trying to cost them out. And so once they've arrived at the figures, it'll be helpful to staff so that they can get a sense of what the available funding will be for each agency. And that's coming from the core allocation. And so While home hardening and defensible space effort continues, there's really just an added emphasis now on also trying to provide some of the existing grant funds that are now, starting to be provided to individuals who are applying for grant funding. And so we encourage folks to, and as I indicated, I believe in last month's report, we encourage folks to continue to apply for grant funding, even for projects that they may have completed last year. They'll be required to submit evidence of their expenses, photographs, things of that nature to demonstrate that they actually had a significant expense and they've worked on some of those things this last year. But that being said, there's also a discussion emerging on how the grant program is going to work consistently throughout the county, throughout the county and from agency to agency. And so that may be something that eventually is going to evolve to either increase funding for different grants or adjust the criteria that grants will be provided for, whether they be need-based or just based on priority and demonstrated risk. But they're encouraging everyone to apply for grant funding upfront. And so far, there may be an increase in that grant funding also by virtue of the increase in the measures total monies received this past fiscal year. So that's something to be determined somewhere down the road as we kind of get a better sense of what the projects look like and what available funding we have for that purpose. I'm gonna move towards guidelines and COVID-19. As I think was stated earlier, as we move towards a more, I think it was Director Case who spoke to what appears to be us moving out of a pandemic towards an endemic. And I certainly hope that's true. Given that just under a month ago, the Marin County Health and Human Services made a determination and issued a public health order for our first responders, law enforcement, police, and fire, and now mandates vaccination. And that that mandate required by March 1st individuals to attest to their status and or by April 15th to be fully vaccinated and or updated. Given that, as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of frustration among some of the individuals who are opposed to vaccination, either for medical or religious reasons or otherwise. And on the 15th of February, Dr. Lisa Santora of the Marin County Public Health Agency decided that she would have a town hall meeting and fielded a lot of questions on her own. And I got to say, I think she did an admirable job of trying to explain the county's position. And in short, it just appears that because of the unpredictability of variants and the unpredictability of where we're going as a society with our vaccination rates and or the potential for new variants to surface, I think the county wanted to take a proactive position to ensure that we're reducing the risk to our communities, those vulnerable communities and populations that we serve, the elderly, the skilled nursing facilities, the youth, the unvaccinated, and even our co-workers. I got to say, I questioned the timing initially myself, but ultimately, as I think about the Omicron virus and how infectious it was, and then now you're hearing information about how infectious it was and how many people died who were vaccinated and still caught the Omicron, it starts to give you the sense that if there's going to be future variants, there's a strong possibility that a variant could be as infectious as the Omicron, but as deadly as the Delta. And so those are the things that we have to be worried about as we move forward. And I certainly hope this is just more of a anticipation than an actual potential reality. But I think science is looking at this as something that, as they watch the variant surface, this is a very real possibility. And so in order to get ahead of any potential staffing impacts, in order to get ahead of possible service delivery impacts and things of that nature, it was just a proactive effort. We'll see where things lie in about 6 months or 12 months from now. But for right now, that's the order, and we're following the order as per the direction provided. Vaccination. Wow, I've got to tell you, it's strange to hear about vaccination and the different types of vaccinations that exist. Using messenger RNA is what Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson did. Janssen, also known as Johnson and Johnson. There's another company Sanofi, which has produced a protein-based vaccine candidate. And I guess it uses what's been traditionally the way a vaccine would operate. And it says it's very effective, roughly 75% very effective against moderate or severe COVID. That being said, there's also drugs that are being created right now, both from Pfizer and Merck, who have higher levels of preventing or reducing hospitalizations and death. And so those drugs are supposed to be taken early on in the infectious stage. If someone's experiencing mild symptoms, as an example of COVID or flu, you're supposed to take the drugs within that, first, I'm assuming incubation period or so. And those are supposed to work and prevent the protein from replicating within your system and binding with the human cells, and thereby preventing the virus from really becoming damaging. And so it's encouraging to see that there's other developments on the horizon that'll prevent potential illness and or long-term COVID and or death from the virus and or the fact that vaccines wane. And that's a whole nother conversation. We're not going to get into that tonight, but just to hear that, there's so many different things taking place right now that are looking to capitalize on the need, but also simultaneously protect human life. This is very encouraging. And one of the things I found interesting was some information I received regarding what's considered to be herd immunity. Right now, I'm understanding across the country, we're roughly about 72, 73%. And that to actually achieve herd immunity or have a real good chance or fighting chance of becoming safer through herd immunity, you're required to be at least in the 90 percentile with your vaccination rates. And so given the rift that exists currently in our society, I don't know that we're ever going to achieve 90%. So it looks kind of unlikely, at least in the near future, that we're going to ever achieve herd immunity in our country if the vaccination rates stay about or hover about where they are or drop. So more on that to follow, I'm sure, as things continue to develop. Happy to announce also that the American Red Cross is resuming their in-home and in-structure and in-facility visits. After a couple of years of not feeling comfortable and safe, they finally decided that they're going to resume the Sound the Alarm, Save a Life smoke detector program. And so given that, we've received several smoke detectors. I have not issued them to staff yet. I wanted to provide some specific direction on one of the requirements that American Red Cross has in the way of capturing data about who they provided the smoke detectors to. Once we do that, they'll be available for anyone who has a need, and hopefully our personnel will either see it at when they're on an EMS call or at some other instance, recognize when somebody's got an outdated smoke detector or one that is non-existent, and offer these up to provide the benefit and value that smoke detectors have, especially the 10-year smoke detectors that we have now with the lithium batteries. So that being said, they're back in full swing and really encouraged to work with fire departments to continue their efforts to now do direct outreach into the communities. And last but not least, we have our monthly report. At the time this report was generated, it was probably right around 3+ weeks into the month. And so given that, our times increased slightly. We're just above 6 minutes, which, it's probably about 30 or so seconds off of our normal mark. I don't know what to attribute that to. That being said, if we kind of got the last several days of data, maybe that would have changed. February was a short month, but still nothing to be concerned about because it's an excellent response time. So, I'm always smiling when I see something sub 6 minutes. This is slightly above, so I'm not smiling quite as much, but I'm still happy. That being said, we had 98 emergency calls in February up to that point, and a little under 2/3 of those were considered medical calls. 2 of those calls involved a COVID positive or suspected COVID positive individual. And we didn't have any fires up to that point in the month. I don't think we ended with any, to my knowledge, for the entire month. So knock on wood there for the months of March and moving forward. That being said, I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks,
Any-
Chief. My question is, I really like appreciate everything that you guys have been doing in the Marin County Wildfire Association, everything like that. How, like, if I'm not in these meetings, I don't think I would know how to get to like these grants or the chipper program or anything like that. And I'm just wondering how that's being spread to the more general public, and how we might as a district be able to support our community members, getting these resources.
That's a great question. I think there's a couple of sources you could look at right away. You can go to Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and their website. You can also go to firesafemarin.org. There's a lot of information that both agencies are sharing on their websites so that people are informed and understand what resources are at their disposal, understand what dates, for instance, the chipper program may be operating in their neighborhoods. And so those would be two of the areas I would say first and foremost to try to access and just look at that content. There's a lot of informational and educational materials on both sites as well, so that you can become a lot more familiar with some of the efforts that are currently underway. Perhaps learn a bit about Zone Haven and the effort there. Learn about, our house outward approach that we've been speaking to, and we're going to continue to emphasize with the community. Defensible space, just you name it, any number of things that pertain to ensuring that you're informed. There's information on how to become a FireWise community. There's information on a wide variety of topics that help individuals kind of get acclimated and oriented to what's going on here, specifically in Marin County. So I would just say go to the websites first and foremost. I think one of the things we're also looking to do is provide direct conversation with staff when we're out conducting our inspections, or excuse me, not with staff, but with the community members as staff is out conducting the inspections. That's certainly a great time to educate members about where they can learn more and contribute and or get information that's relevant to them and their communities. As I stated before, the Zone Haven platform as an example, you want to know your zone campaign. That's information that our members want to know so that when something occurs, they can know right off the bat whether or not something is affecting their zone or something adjacent to them, and start being prepared in the event there's a situation that they need to be apprised of. So I think there's a variety of sources there. It's just, and it probably, to your point, might not be a bad idea if we generate a one-page flyer as an example that we pass out when we do our inspections, and leave that flyer as something for people to reference. I'm old school. I prefer sometimes, things that are handwritten and easily to access instead of me having to search through technology to find it. But that's certainly a way that we might want to approach, getting good information out about some of those various things that we know will assist the community in understanding what's going on.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I could see doing something through schools or something too, because everybody's, a lot of community members are connected that way. Something to think about, because I think there's so many great resources. I just think the average person in the community doesn't know how to access them. Do we have links to those websites on our website, Eric? Do you know?
We have a link, I believe, and don't quote me on this. I was just actually thinking
Yeah.
about this, to the Marin Wildfire website, which is, where I would direct people to first, and they go from there. And then to follow up with what Chief White said, the MWPA and with Fire Safe Marin just literally today sent out to participating agencies information regarding upcoming chipper days for this season, and information on how to do that. So literally just got it today. We'll work on, just kind of sharing that. They even put together little PDFs with the info, and we'll also, blast it out via social media, and then mention, because, those two things really kind of go hand in hand too. It's because, the grants aren't huge, but they help. And if that's to, cut down the stuff, and then you combine it and time it with the chipper day, which somebody will come and then haul it away, you can actually get a tremendous amount of work done for that amount. So kind of, and then to Chief's point, and he and I and Quinn Gardner, need to kind of look at what are our goals with the home assessments this year too, because we've hit them the last 2 years in a row. with every house basically in all of Marinwood and Lucas Valley getting at least one, if not two assessments in the past 2 years. So just what is the best, smartest approach and use of those funds on doing that too. But yeah, so it's kind of a lot of the info to go out of, hey, there's grants available to remove this stuff. The professionals are coming by with recommendations on what should get removed, and then there's also an opportunity to get it hauled away for free. So
Right.
it's kind of that triple prong approach that is trying to, in essence, lead that horse as close to water as we can possibly get them and make it as easy as we can for them.
Totally. Yeah. And the home hardening piece too, I think was an interesting one. I'm not even sure I completely understand what's available through those grants, but when I read the websites, I got to go back and look again.
Yeah, I
And
did
I'll-
a quick look up because we were asking about this. There's a defensible place fire, but there's nothing about grants to help you home harden. And then there's the open space neighbors improving fire safety, but there is the firesafemarin.org that's linked there, but it doesn't have a thing saying, if you go here, there'll be information about these sorts of things. So maybe possibly, I don't know if we need to work in coordination with you, Chief, to update the fire department area on the website but yeah,
Good.
sorry.
I'm sorry, which website were you on?
The Marinwood website.
Okay, I see.
So I
Yeah,
went to the
we-
Marinwood Fire Department and then I did wildfire prevention.
Yeah, we can certainly
And,
look at all
yeah.
that, and I'm sure it could use some levels of updating and things like that too. So we'll take a look at that, and we have staff here that can help kind of put some stuff together if we tell them what to put together.
And maybe if you want to add, symptoms in here, the stuff that you just announced about the American Heart Association. Not American Heart Association. I work with those people. The Red Cross, that maybe with the smoke detector program, you might want to put the link in there for that. I don't know.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we not have a huge, a place to sign up to receive like an email list? Like to be able to do an email blast? Or do we use
We
social
do.
media?
Most of that is through our ActiveNet registration system on the rec side. Don't really necessarily have that in place, nor necessarily dedicated staff to kind of be on top of that from the fire side. And I think we rely a little bit more on kind of those mass broadcasts via social media
Okay.
for those.
No, I'm not asking to implement it. I'm just asking.
Yeah, not necessarily on the fire side, but I know Fire Safe Marin certainly does, and the Wildfire Authority certainly has places where you can register to get updates on information coming through there. And for us, I would steer most of these things back towards those two agencies rather than try to play an intermediary.
I agree. My thought was maybe even having a link. And it could be on our page, but sign up for information, like a comment that says sign up for information, click here and go to that page.
Right.
So it directs them where to go,
Sure.
just a thought, but try not to add more to your plate.
Now, it's been a while. We need to go through and look at all aspects of the website on what needs to be updated. It's just something we should, have a better, more regular practice of doing.
Chief White can handle it. That's
Okay.
fine.
Well, I'm gonna have to delegate it because I certainly don't have the skills.
Nice.
All right. Any comment from the public?
Yeah, 1 second, please. Steven.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Chief. I appreciate the updates every month, and I understand that the safety employees are under a special requirement to be vaccinated. And I'm a little concerned, Chief, because in your report, I'm sure you're parroting or you're reporting on what you've been told by Dr. Lisa Santora, but some of the stuff that you said is contrary to some of the science that I've heard. And I would just caution you to have a bit of humility and listen to your staff in their request to accommodate the public health orders. I really don't want to lose anyone over these COVID vaccines or COVID for that, all that matters. And one of the things you can do is understand that not only is Marin way out on a limb as far as a response to COVID, if you look at departments nationwide, they're not experiencing the problems that we fear here in Marin. So you got to back up your guys. That's all I want to say, because without those guys showing up, we don't have, we're all a little less safe. And that's all I wanted to say about that. So thanks.
Thank you, Stephen.
Can I respond, please?
Yes.
Mr. Nessel, I appreciate your perspective. I certainly understand that our members were on the front lines when the pandemic occurred and began. We were some of the first folks that stood up and said we should be recipients of the vaccine. And there's a good reason for that. We're responsible to protect the public. We're responsible to make things better. I would feel terrible if I was an individual who unknowingly passed on a deadly virus to someone else. And I'm actually supposed to be here to protect and assist that individual. One of the responsibilities we have as first responders is to do just that, make sure that we're protecting others. And so while my personal opinion is just that, it's my personal opinion, it just coincidentally aligns with the public health order that's come forward. Also know of individuals who've died from COVID. And I think sometimes when something doesn't hit home, people don't fully believe or feel like that it's something that they have to be overly concerned about. To your point about what other agencies aren't experiencing, that's kind of like just the opposite of what my experience was. I know people who were in New York when the pandemic first initially occurred, and all the calls they were running on were with COVID infected individuals who perished. And so when you watch and see something like that, we were very fortunate here in California that we didn't have that reality or that experience, but I'm quite sure if we had that experience here, it would have really resonated in a different way with not only the public, but also with first responders. And so even within the first responder community, there's a difference between accommodating, but also recognizing that accommodation may come with significant expense or even be unachievable at times, especially when you start increasing the numbers of folks that may be looking for an accommodation. And I'm not here to say it's good, bad, or different. It's just certainly something that has to be acknowledged. I've watched staff in San Rafael and other agencies spend a great bulk of their time addressing COVID-related concerns for individuals who are not vaccinated or updated, instead of doing the job that firefighters are normally responsible for doing or leaders are normally responsible for doing. They're spending a bulk of their time addressing COVID. That's not sustainable. And so I want to offer some differing perspective, but I certainly believe in trying to ensure that our members have the full opportunity to pursue a exemption and or an accommodation, and then let the decision makers land on whether or not that's something that's truly achievable, or if it's in the best interest of the coworkers and or public we serve. So I appreciate your comments, but I just wanted you to see, maybe there's another side to this as well that you haven't really given a lot of consideration to. Thank you.
And Lisa, if you don't mind, I want to follow up the chief on, just making it sure that it's very clear that, this is a public health order. This wasn't a decision that was made by employers or management within various agencies. This was an order given by the public health officer. It's not a recommendation. As an employer, we have no choice but follow it and to implement it as it is. And in terms of exemptions, those are legally defined as well. So I certainly agree with Chief White in, supporting the members and things like that. But, from an employment perspective, we don't get to pick and choose on this. This is an order that essentially has the authority of law behind it. And so as an employer, we simply have to abide by it. And that's really there's not an option any other direction.
Thanks for that clarification, Eric. All right, well, unless there's anything else, thank you, Chief, as always.
My pleasure. We'll see you guys next time. And thanks again for the helpful suggestions tonight.
Thank you.
Have a
Thanks,
great night.
Chief.
Thank
All
you.
right, you too.
Great
Good
night.
night.
All right, so moving on then to item H, board member items of interest, requests for future agenda items.
On the future agenda, I do have what Director Case asked, and just in terms of separating out from the consent calendar, the resolution for remote meetings, so that way that could be more fully discussed amongst the board and looking at the potential possibilities of returning to in-person meetings. And then obviously we have the pay schedule review process, but as discussed, that's going to come a few meetings down the line.
That was the one I was going to suggest next.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Any others?
I mean, you're going to do it, but the update on the facility and the maintenance facility, and then with where we are with sending out the requests for the eastern and western areas.
Yeah, well, my goal and, kind of what I
Yeah.
have my self-imposed deadline is by the time we get to the next meeting that has already been sent out. And now we'll just be in the process of waiting for that to close.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. But I'll certainly give you an update all the same.
And then I guess, I mean, at that point, we will have had registration for the summer, just kind of so that we know in terms of budget, what we might have gotten in terms of numbers of kids coming in. Is that a reasonable request or no?
Yeah, Luke will include that kind of information, I'm
Okay.
sure, in his report. And obviously there'll be a full-blown, updated draft budget that'll come
Right.
in, that'll have, our estimates on what we're expecting from both the revenue and its expenditure standpoint as related to, camp enrollments and expenditures and registrations.
Okay, perfect. And then we had the thing about what other districts are doing in terms of, are they doing it annually or biannually, and how are they doing their
Yeah, no, that was what I
evaluation?
had already
Okay,
just
okay,
mentioned.
sorry.
That's a few meetings down the line.
Okay, sorry.
Right. But yeah, I mean, and at any point, if we're, gathering information, we should be holding on to it to share when the time is right.
Correct, please.
I think,
Okay.
sorry, I think too, just in the really big picture, so I'm not, as the housing starts to get sorted, and I realize this is going to be way down the line, but I think we need to start taking into consideration what is going to be the impact on Marinwood. And so as that starts to clarify, I'd love for us to start looking at, wow, what do we need to do as a district that is totally under our control? I realize the housing element is not, we're not the decision-making body there. But certainly as soon as decisions are made, and it sounds like they're going to be made sooner rather than later, that we need to figure out how that's going to impact the services that we currently offer, and like, how's that going to impact us financially? There's a lot of different ramifications. So just to keep that on our radar as that starts to get finalized and moving forward, I think probably happen quicker than we all think, given the push.
If I could chime in on that a little bit too, Chris, and what my understanding is, they're still kind of whittling down, identifying these sites. And then from there, these sites will go through a much more full-blown environmental impact review. Environmental impact isn't just like the natural environment, but it looks at everything, the impact on schools, on services, everything that it would. I would fully suspect that we would actually most likely be contacted for feedback into that process in terms of how it could impact the services that this district is responsible to providing. You hit the nail on the head in terms of, what types of positions the board or the district can take is, related to how it would impact the services we provide and our ability to provide those services.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, of course.
Did I understand correctly when I was looking at the various housing that there's multiple ones that are being suggested within our area?
There are. I
Okay.
would push you,
Like 3?
towards the county and the housing element to have that conversation though.
Yeah.
Not
No, I mean, I
necessarily
was
in this
I read it and I was like, 3? Really? Okay. So, all right.
Right. So then at that point, are we good to adjourn?
You
Yeah,
need public comment.
Oh, public comment, excuse me. Sorry, Stephen.
1 second.
Thanks, Lisa. And thank you, Chris and Eric, to talk for that information about the housing element. By the way, those meetings are recorded. You can find them online at YouTube under the county. Also, you can visit savemarinwood.org. I think I have these meetings up as well, so you can get some more information. And specifically, Siobhan, there's many more than 3 apartment complexes potentially. One list has about 2,300 units to be added to Marinwood Lucas Valley, units being housing units. And with the density bonus, that could rise to about 3,500 units. Now, we only have in Marinwood CSD about 2,300 homes. So that gives you the idea of the kind of impacts that we may be experiencing. So I think I have been on the meetings, and I hope each one of you gets on those meetings as well and renders your own independent conclusions on what's happening. 2 years ago, in March 2020, I stood up at the meeting. We were discussing the budget, and I said, but have you considered the potential impact of COVID and how that may change things? And that really was not discussed that night, other than, oh yeah, that could be a problem. Hopefully it won't be a problem. And we had a big, obviously, since that time, 2 weeks to slow the spread started that Friday, and the rest is history. We're also in a crisis right now because of what's going on in Ukraine and the oil. And if you filled up your car, it's a lot of money. We're experiencing inflation. And that is another issue that I think the board should potentially look at that and how they may respond in the future to a highly inflationary environment. We're already there, but it may impact our programs and our staffing and everything else. And we should stay ahead of that problem. So those 2 issues. And then lastly, as always, we need to improve the accessibility and maintenance in our parks. I think it's unacceptable how we ignore people that have mobility impairments in our parks. I don't think it's a very easy fix, but other than that, good night.
Thanks, Stephen. All right, so then are we good to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll
No.
second.
All right, we are adjourned.
Are we good to vote on
Good
that
night,
or no?
everyone.
Are we good without a vote? We usually vote here.
Oh, we need to vote to adjourn?
I
Okay,
don't know.
all right, let's vote.
Let's just do it. It'll be fun, right?
That'll be fun.
Nothing else to do.
Board President Ruggieri,
Aye.
Director Case,
Aye.
Director Kilkenny,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
I abstain.
Noted. Thank you.
Motion passes.
Have a nice evening, everybody. Thanks for all of your input and feedback. It's very much appreciated. And as always, reach out with any other questions or clarifications at any time.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow
Thank-
morning.
Thank you.
Hopefully
Everybody
on
take it
Zoom.
easy.
All right, take
Oh,
care.
yes.
We have our
Yes.
meeting
Next module.
next module.
Bye.
Aye.